after showing this yesterday, I should probably explain about this car. This is something I've had for, I think, right around 40 years. And before I got this one, I actually had another one. This is the Fleetmaster. Before this one, I had a Fleet Line, which is a slightly different body style, but they were both 47 Chevys. But the Fleet Line had the top came down at a really steep angle, and so your window was almost flat. You had almost no visibility out of the back window. In fact, in winter, it was completely useless. And that was a two-door, but basically, mechanically, it was the same machine, so I was familiar with them. So when this one came up, I jumped at it, and I drove this for many years. I used to, when I was working in town, I drove this back and forth, putting on 100 miles a day. And it works perfectly fine. They're geared fairly high. It's a little 216 motor, but they'll cruise down the highway at 60 very comfortably. When they just kind of float along, these big old cars are that way. In fact, this is old enough where it doesn't have your regular shock absorbers. It's got these knee action shocks that you never replace. You just change the fluid in them. They look like one of those heavy door closers. That's kind of how they work. So you just put in fork oil, or you can sometimes buy a regular shock absorber oil. Well, like I say, I drove it a lot. It's got 130,000 on it now, and I think I put on at least half of that. But for these last years, I really wasn't driving it. I had more use for a pickup or particularly four-wheel drive. But I was intended to get this going again. Not that it wasn't going. I mean, it ran, but I always had trouble with the charging system, and it was hard to get parts before the internet, before you could go online and find anything. Now, anything you want, you can get. It's not a problem. It used to be a lot harder to fix old stuff like this. So, like I said, I've been working on it some. Working mostly on the mechanicals, making sure everything's in good shape. Like, one of the next things I'll be doing is, the motor and the transmission are fine, and I just put a clutch in not that awful long ago. And like the motor, I know I overhauled that long ago. So it runs fine. Like I say, I had trouble with the generator, but I was able to get a generator, and I happened to find a new regulator online for it. And once I put that in, now she charges fine. So it's mostly like now suspension and brakes I'm working on. I know the one thing I was always intending to do, which I had one of the back wheels off the other day, and I decided when I had it jacked up, and when I was monkeying around, I could see I've got loose kingpins. It has kind of a floaty sort of steering. Well, it's the kingpins that are bad. So I've got them ordered, to replace them. Not a fun job. Kingpins are never a fun job. But as long as I got that apart, then I can redo them shock absorbers and stuff while I'm in there, and check the front wheel bearings, because these are a little notorious for having problems with the front wheel bearings, because they run two ball bearings rather than running a Timken like most vehicles do, a tapered bearing. These simply ran two balls. Now, what people tend to do with stuff like this, like I say, I'm going to do the brakes, and they're old drum brakes. Not that hard to work on if you know what you're doing on brakes. people tend to want to, instead of just repairing the vehicle, they want to update it, upgrade. You got to put in a new motor and a new transmission. That's a cycle I don't like to get into. It's a slippery slope because, like, if you put in a bigger motor, the suspension isn't built to handle it. It's built to handle a 216. These are very well engineered. This is, like I say, a 47, but they really never changed since 38. They continued to make them during the war years, but there was nothing that really changed in them, or very minor changes. It wasn't until really the 1950 models, when they came out, that was a whole new body style. But otherwise, they kept making the same car for many years. So parts are available going all the way back to the 38s. It's very easy to find parts that fit. If you know how to, kind of cross-reference and stuff. So it's not a problem finding parts now. It used to be, like I say, before the internet. But now I can get anything I need. So I'm going at the mechanicals first and the electricals. I got to check out all the lights and all that. And there again is a thing where people, you got to upgrade to 12 volt. No, you don't. They work. 6 volt works just fine. 12 volt is convenient if you want to be putting in your CD player and all this stuff. And high intensity headlights, I don't need any of that. I just need this car to work like the car was intended to work. They're a perfectly fine vehicle as they were. You just have to repair them. And that's true of a lot of old things. The old things will outlast the newer stuff. The old stuff is made to be rebuilt, and just keep using it. I can afford to run an old car. I cannot afford to run a new car. So, as I get the time and the money and the inclination, I'll just gradually keep making improvements on it. But the last will be the cosmetic stuff. I do have to do some glass replacement. I've got cracks in the windshields, and that sort of thing. But the glass now is easily available. There's a company right in Minnesota that carries all the glass I need for this. It's all flat except for the back window, and the back window in this is fine, so I don't need that. The basic body on this, the main body, is really in excellent shape. In fact, this is all the original factory paint that's on here. The only thing that's been repainted was the fender on that side had been replaced one time, but many, many years ago. And when they put the paint on there, it evidently wasn't done very well because it kind of got that kind of an alligator-y thing to it going on now. Otherwise, it's all original. I have touched up places where it wore, the paint just simply wore down to the red primer that is underneath. But a lot of the chrome, most of the chrome is in excellent shape. The good part on these old ones, like I said, the body is solid. And you do have, like right here is a spot. Now, this is common to these old Chevys. They had a channel here that didn't drain, and there's no inner fender like on a lot of vehicles, so the slop would get up in there, sit in that channel, and they all rusted out here. The good thing on these is you can simply unbolt the fender to repair them. Both the front fenders and the back ones are easily replaceable. You pop them off, bang any dents out, pop them back on, because you're not dealing with the inner fender and all that stuff. But this is just something that you have to deal with on the old Chevys. They all get that right on that corner. But basically, it's in pretty good shape. The interior is kind of a rat's nest. It's old cloth, and after this many years, that's just kind of given up the ghost, just from the sun beating on it and stuff. So I'm going to have to redo that at some time, but that's way down the road. I'm not concerned about that. Like I say, right now, my concern is get it running good, working good, driving good. then I'll worry about some of the cosmetic stuff. But it functions as a very good automobile for me, you know, for the driving that I do. It's funny, this one, when it came from the factory, they had ordered a lot of the options at the time. Well, because this was, you could buy a new car, you know, before that, during the war, you had to have a really good reason to need a new car. You know, they didn't make a lot of them, most of them were government service cars. You had to really need a car to get a car, and you had to prove it. So after the war, then people, oh man, buy a new car, put everything you can put on it. So it's got the spotlight and the visor, it's got the backup lights, it's got a lot of accessories, you know, like the radio and the heater that's under the seat that throws heat front and back, you know, which is a nice deal. They're a really nice, comfortable car. But the one option that was never on here is blinkers. It never had turn signals. Evidently, when they ordered it, they figured, what do we want them for? Yeah. And that's fine with me. I'm used to driving, doing hand signals, and the good thing is, legally they're grandfathered in. If the car never came with them, you don't have to have them. So, and the places, I don't drive in the heavy traffic, you know, I'm just running back and forth to town. It's just drive in, drive out, you know. So, turn signals, not an important deal. Plus, the way our roads are set up now, if you're in a high traffic zone, you've got turn lanes. I mean, if you're in that lane, you're obviously turning, you know, give a hand signal to be legal and then pull in. But I'll be tinkering around with it, like I say. Brakes, you know, it's got brakes now, but I want to replace them just to have that out of the way, because they're not fun to work on, but the kingpins are really not fun to work on any vehicle. You know, I've never found an easy replacement. But they are available, and they're surprisingly available and not very expensive. I think it was like $50 or $60 for the set to do the front, and that's the pins and the bushings and the bearings and the whole works. So not a big deal, but it's a fine car. It's my kind of car. I really like these. They're fun to drive. It's probably not for everybody. You know, people that are in a hurry, and you know, it's not that kind of. Where you got a 216, you're not in a big hurry. But they start good. They run good. This is the last year that actually have the hole in the front for the crank. Then they quit doing that in later years. But this I can still crank start, which is an option I like to have. You know, I like options. That's a good option. But you'll be seeing more of it. You know, I'll be driving it more. Like I say, I want to get the kingpins fixed because, you know, it isn't like the steering is really loose. It's that it's got a lot of, they can tip like that, you know. Kingpins are, if you can get a little shake going on and stuff like that, so they've got to be replaced. And my tires are getting old, though the back ones aren't too old. They got tread on them, getting a little weather check though, so that's something I've got to replace down the line. But, see, back when I used to drive these all the time, 16-inch tire was hard to find. Now, no problem, you know. So things have changed, but the internet has really made fixing this kind of stuff a lot easier. So you'll be seeing more of it. I don't know how much it is of interest to people, but it's something I like to monkey with. She's a fine machine. You know, and it's kind of funny too because you think, it's not safe. It doesn't have seat belts. There again, I'm grandfathered in. Don't need to have seat belts, but these things are a big chunk of metal. They ain't gonna collapse on you. Though the whole deal of the removable fenders is kind of handy because, like I say, it's easy to repair if you get into a ding in a parking lot, or I think that one fender probably got nailed, somebody pulling into a garage, because that's a fairly good-sized car, and you're sitting in this, you know, kind of low down. You got a lot of headroom, but not the greatest visibility for tight corners, you know. But great machine. That's a true automobile back when we used to really know how to make a car.